Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good morning to you wherever you may be. Welcome to the BigSpeak webinar. This is the Mashup Series with Lisa Bodell and James Lawrence. I'm Marianne Kuga, Marketing Manager here at BigSpeak, and I'm very excited to introduce you to our moderator today. Amy Dernish-Jones is a Vice President and a Strategic Account Advisor at BigSpeak. And Amy, if you'll join me, please. Hey, Amy. Hi, thanks for being with me this morning. All right, so before we dive in, a couple quick logistical notes. We are recording this session and we will automatically distribute it to all attendees and registrants tomorrow. The recording and all past recordings can be found at bigspeak.com/webinar. You can ask questions via the questions box and chat with us in the chat box, and both can be found in your Zoom toolbar at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so now I'm going to dip out for the rest of the session, and Amy, I turn things over to you.
Thanks, Marianne. Well, welcome to the first ever Mashup webinar here in the BigSpeak series, and my first hosting experience, not counting happy hours. So I'm really looking forward to having some fun and some learnings from the two speakers that will be joining us. I wanted to acknowledge that there's obviously a lot going on in the world and in our country right now. And I think that's what triggered BigSpeak to think about a mashup series and bring people together, highlight similarities and themes that unite us. The two speakers that I'm going to introduce here in a minute, at first blush, might appear that they have more differences than similarities, but don't let their bios fool you. There's definitely common threads that we'll unpack together. First, Lisa Bodell is CEO of FutureThink, award-winning author of best-selling books, Why Simple Wins and Killing the Company. She's personally worked with BigSpeak, both internally with our team and with many of our top clients. Lisa is an expert on the topics of innovation and simplicity. I'm super excited to hear what she has to share today. And James Lawrence, AKA the Iron Cowboy. He's known for wearing cowboy hats during his Ironman races and is the subject of a Netflix documentary, The Iron Cowboy, Story of the 50-50-50, which is one of the greatest feats in human endurance ever. It was awesome. I really enjoyed watching it. And James helps people and organizations through his motivational talks redefine impossible. So welcome to the first BigSpeak Mashup, Lisa and James.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yes, hello. Thank you, man. That was great. Great to be here.
Awesome. No cowboy hat today, James? Mixing it up?
No, it's exclusively for running.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Well, it's great to see you both. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this and you know, trying to think about, you know, what would bridge you all together and what you might have in common, I was like, oh man, I got a doozy on this one. But then as I started kind of noodling on it, I thought about your work, Lisa, with removing complexity and focusing on, you know, the simple wins.
Right.
And James, obviously, you know, having done the 50 Ironmans in 50 states and 50 consecutive days, I mean, the amount of focus that you would need to do to train for that and complete that is obvious. So, you know, I think there's going to be quite a few commonalities here. Lisa, if I might start with you.
Sure.
How do you see the connection between you and James, perhaps? And how do you know, relating that to an organization, how can you share with us how an organization can foster a culture of simplicity and eliminating complexity and like focusing on moving the needle?
Yeah. In fact, well, so James and I were talking before, we have a lot in common. He's run, you know, these 50 Ironmans. I've watched 50 Ironmans, so there's a lot in common. I got in 50 steps today. I think one of the things that he and I have in common is this area of focus. And what I really like about that is, you know, he's got this Olympic level of focus. James, really, it's so impressive about what you accomplished. It's such a feat. You know, my goal is to help create that same level of focus within business. And I think the issue right now is we have to think differently in business because, you know, why do we train Olympic level athletes? Why aren't we training at Olympic level entrepreneurs, innovators, and leaders? We're not. And, you know, the amount of mastery and focus that went into, James, what you do, you know, whether it's your 10,000 hours that we talk about to get mastery, why aren't we getting more of that out of our organizations? Because certainly we spend more than 10,000 hours at work. So what's going on? And so my goal with focus is just like a training plan. How do I get people to eliminate the unnecessary crap that holds them back every day, so they can become that Olympic level focused leader that they need to be? And it's not that they can't, they just don't have a training plan, and they just get distracted every single day. So my goal is to help them get there so they can be like, you know, the Iron Cowboy at work.
That's great. Yeah, I that's what I, you know, struggle with too, you know, just eliminating, you know, the things that get me distracted every single day. And now we're in a whole new world of, you know, kids at home, and, you know, so it's interesting. And I think training organizations is the key.
Well, you need a plan. And I think about, you know, James, I think about you. It's kind of like you got all these business people, right? And they want to have, they go to the gym every day, right? But they're not really working out. That's kind of their equivalent when they go to work every day and they sit in meetings and drown in emails. Yeah, technically they're going to work, but they're not really getting the workout. So, right, I can't imagine that you would have accomplished your goal if you got distracted every single day. Like, you had to focus and you just eliminated all the unnecessary.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things we're seeing right now is people are focusing and worrying about things they can't control. Mm-hmm. And if we were to shift and have a paradigm movement on, okay, what is in front of me? What can I control? What are the few tasks that are going to move the needle and get me closer to where I'm trying to go? That's right. And we'd see a lot more success across the board, but we're all, for lack of a better word, projecting on what the future may be and all of these unknowns. And we've forgotten about what's right in front of us, what we can control. Mm-hmm. And I think a massive similarity between us is two things. One, focusing on the basics. I love the quote, "A high tolerance for monotony is an underrated superpower." Mm-hmm. And when things become the hardest, they should become the easiest, because we've mastered those basics. We've become an expert at them. Mm-hmm. And then literally the secret to success is doing a lot of little things consistently over a long period of time. And if we can put the basics into consistency, man, it's almost impossible to lose.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, less distractions. You know, it's interesting, just to build on that, James. I like that about doing small things consistently over time, right? Adds up to the big thing. And that's, you know, I'm wondering your thoughts on this too. I think that's what holds people back, is that they, you know, especially now with the unknown, they look at the unknown as this big thing. And if you can break it down into parts, that's cognitive learning theory. If you can break things down into parts, you're more likely to tackle them because they don't seem so big. So it's like you, right, with a training plan. Here's what's most important. Here's what I can control. And if they can break it down into what I need to accomplish, I'm more likely to get there.
Yeah, and I think two of the biggest feelings that are affecting people today are anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
And those two emotions and feelings come from being overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And that happens when fear comes in and we start focusing on all of the things we can't control. That's right. And I coach Ironman athletes all the time, and they have a goal. They come to us, they want to do a huge event, an Ironman, and they want to do stuff beyond that I've motivated them to do big projects. And without doubt, I'll sit down with them and I'll start to write out the plan, what it's going to take to achieve that goal. And I am shocked how many times it happens to where somebody goes, "Oh, I didn't realize that's what it would take. I'm out." Right. And it's just this shocking realization to people that it's like, oh, if I have a plan, two things happen. One, I have a plan, I can get there. I can manage each individual piece. Or two, man, no way, I'm not willing to sacrifice that. Right. Because if we knew how hard and difficult a road, a challenge, or something was going to be, most of us wouldn't do it. And so we have to come up with a plan that is, and that's the importance of a plan, right? Make it manageable, make it task oriented, make it like small pieces at a time.
Yeah.
Accountable. Yeah. And when you can manage just those small pieces of any project, I tell them, look, we have the goal. We're no longer getting ready for an Ironman. We're going to put that up on the shelf. Yeah. And then, because what I do is I give them a workout, and they get overwhelmed with that. And they're like, well, I didn't do that workout to the highest level. There's no way I can do an Ironman. And I'm like, okay, forget it. We're not doing an Ironman. Your only goal is to focus on the execution of today's workout. Do you Do you trust me? Yes. Do you trust the process? Yes. Okay, great. We've got a game plan. We've got a roadmap. We've surrounded ourselves with a team. Now let's just execute on the daily things that's going to get us there. And guess what? If we do that and focus on what's right in front of us, the day's going to come. We're going to toe the line, and it's going to be a victory lap because we're ready.
You know what I love? All right, so let me give you the corollary that I have, which is, so the thing that I love that you talked about was control. And that's the other thing, is like people they're worrying about things that aren't in their control. Same thing happens in business, right? Yeah. So people will come to us, and I'm going to tell you about an exercise we do, which is called Kill a Stupid Rule. And people love it, right? Because it's kind of obvious what it is, but they don't realize, oh, I can get rid of things because I'm rewarded for more, not less. And so they're always, complaining and bitching and moaning about all these things that are out of their control. And, I'd be curious, I'm going to ask a question of people in the chat here in a minute. So get ready and have your chat up. How many people are just drowning in unnecessary work every day? Yep. And all the stuff that they complain about out of their control are things like, expense reports, IT, legal, all this stuff they don't have control over. And so when we talk to them, we say, listen, we want you to kill rules right now so you can get some time back for work that matters, that are within your sphere of control. So let's just look at the work that you do every day, not all year, whatever. And let's get rid of the stuff every day that you think is completely unnecessary. And the minute they just look at their sphere of control, they realize there's so much they can get rid of on their own. And that's really powerful because then it feels like that they can do it. It's that daily plan, like you said. So yeah. I like that, breaking it into parts and just focusing on the next step so they'll get there.
And what I started to do that really has worked effectively for me recently is, so I've got this, and all people that are ambitious or have big goals, we have a monster to-do list. And trust me, you're never going to cross everything off your list, so don't try to do it in a day. And it's just, if we focus on that list, again, we become overwhelmed and filled with anxiety, and that starts that spiral. And so one little trick that I did is I take out a little Post-it note every single day. Mm-hmm. And I draw a line right in the middle of it to divide top and bottom. And I write 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. And the top section are the 3 critical tasks I'm going to do today. Mm-hmm. And then I've got a team, and I write the 3 critical tasks that I'm going to assign. And then that way on my list, I look at things, okay, is that something I have to do, or can somebody else do that? Mm-hmm. Right? And then that way I look at the end of my day, and if I've had the worst day ever, I've got 6 things done. And if I've had a best day, I've gone through my 3, and I was like, hey, I'm feeling super motivated today. I'm going to add 3 more to it off of my master list. But I'm not really focusing on that list. And that way, every single day, that needle is moving. I love the concept that if the only way to lose is to stop showing up. Yeah. And so it's like, if you just do one little thing and just slowly chip away at it, dude, you're going to get there.
Great quick win. I love it.
Yeah, so true. Thanks for sharing that. And James, and Lisa too, but James, I'd be curious, I know on your 50-50-50, and maybe you might want to give some folks a highlight of what that was that might not be familiar, but you experienced quite a few challenges. So you had a plan, and but then you had infected foot blisters, you had tropical storms, you have sleep deprivation, dehydration. So I think a lot of people, like you had mentioned, are kind of working in a headwind right now. The plan that they had intact has been turned upside down. So any advice on how to kind of keep pushing forward?
Yeah, I'll start here by saying we are right now in the 50th anniversary of the completion of the 50. We started it 5 years ago. I could honestly still be trying to plan the perfect 50 today. Just trying to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together. But here's the problem. You cannot put together a perfect plan because you don't know all of the obstacles and trials and adversity you're going to come across along the way. And that's the whole beauty of all of this is I want that adversity. I want that struggle because that's how I learn, adapt, and evolve. And there's certain things and relationships and people, especially in business, that you don't know until you start. So first big word of advice, don't wait to start. Start right now. You're never going to come up with the perfect plan. But kind of this would normally take an hour, but to give you a quick synopsis of where I came from and what we did. Grew up in Canada as a wrestler. That was kind of my athletic background. was in a contest, rode a Ferris wheel for 10 days, which ultimately changed my life. And I came to Utah, met my wife. We just celebrated 19 years. We've got 5 kids together, and we started multi-sport together. And I started literally up off the couch, struggled through my first 4-mile fun run. My wife called me pathetic. It motivated me. Did a marathon, hated it, led to triathlon, found the world championships, wanted to train for it, was super excited, found Ironman. An Ironman is 2.4 miles of swimming, 112 miles of biking, followed by a full marathon run, which is 26.2 miles. That's a total of 140.6 miles, single day. NBC calls it the most difficult, challenging single day in sports history, right? I was on a journey. We owned a mortgage company, we lost everything, had to rebuild, wanted to raise money for charity, accidentally broke a world record, wanted to break another one, led us to the 50, right? Because when we're in the middle of something, it seems like it's the hardest, then we accomplish it and we perceive and believe we can do more, which is so true, right? That's why you have to start. We started, we gained experience, gained knowledge, success breeds success, confidence breeds confidence, blah, 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 right? So get to the point where conceptually, I believe we can do as a team and a family, 50 consecutive Ironmans, 1 in every state. That's 50 Ironmans, an Ironman a day for 7 weeks. Okay. So that's what put us on this path to do that. We just had belief we wanted to do something impossible. Everybody told us it was impossible. And you're right. We experienced so much trial, so much adversity, so much things we had no idea what happened, but that's the whole point, right? You're never going to come up with the perfect plan.
That's right.
You have to build towards it. When I set the goal to do 50, I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I knew 2 things. I believed in myself, which is the most important thing. And I knew I had time to chip away. I gave the goal the respect that it needed. And I knew if I just showed up every day with relentless pursuit and outworked everybody in the industry, we would get to the point where we could at least start. And then from there, it was a learning experience to where we would grow and learn. And I welcomed adversity. I mean, it sucked, but we welcomed it because it allowed us to learn and grow. And we needed that as we progressed through this challenge and into the back part of what everybody said was impossible.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. So it's like, I heard you say the words like, it was about agility, breaking barriers, resilience, all of it, right? So you can plan for the worst when you need it. And I think that, again, translates to business.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. My vessel or journey to learn these lessons was through triathlon. And I firmly believe that in life, we all have to learn the same lessons. And this stupid stuff is going to keep happening to us until we learn the lessons that are put in front of us, right? And that's the whole point of life, is to learn the lessons, try to evolve and become the best version of ourselves, and move forward past that to the next lesson, right? And so I welcome adversity. I love trials. I think this is a very unique time in history. And it's sad, but it's exciting, and it's every emotion put into one. And I think it's an amazing time.
Yeah, great time for people to reinvent.
Yeah.
Perspective. Thank you. Lisa, are you seeing, business-wise, are you seeing any, or worked with anybody recently where you're seeing leaders or organizations dig deep and, work through their challenges, that have come up, with the recent pandemic, or, what everybody's facing here? 2020 has been off to quite a start. Have you seen any great examples out there of, kind of people digging deep and kind of taking James's approach to? Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things I was thinking about when James and you were talking is like how, what are the ways that we teach people to do that? It's, right now people's big thing is to pivot, right? They have to be able to pivot. And the people that are able to do that already have teams that are agile. They can overcome barriers. They don't see them as problems. They see them as possibilities. You can say all those phrases, but really it's people that are always thinking in terms of scenarios. And so, we talk to people all the time about how to pivot. And there's a big thing we do and a small thing we do. The big one is, and this was my first book, we teach people how to kill their company on an ongoing basis. And the idea behind that is proactive obsolescence. So how do you give teams permission every year when they're strategic planning, or just on an ongoing basis? You force them to look at what's wrong and identify it. So they have to pretend that they're their number one competitor, and they have to try and put themselves out of business. And what that does is it makes a war mentality or a game out of where are we really weak, and then what are we going to do about it? And what's cool is then they start to think about what the possibilities are to shore that up. And really good people that are prepared for other scenarios because they're used to planning this way. They're constantly looking at, okay, what could happen, but what will we do? They've got a plan for it. The key is getting people in that mindset. And there's a really great exercise we do with people called That's Fantastic. And what we do is we put people in threes. So it'd be Amy, James, and me. We'd get in a group, and I would be the CEO. And the two of you would just have to rattle off horrible things that are happening at the company to me. And the only way I'm allowed to respond is that's fantastic. And what that does is so for example, I'm the CEO of a bowling alley. And Amy and James, you come into me and James, you go, bad news. We can't use bowling balls anymore. They explode. And I go, that's fantastic, James. You know why? Because I think bowling balls are boring. I wanted to reinvent the game anyway, and I want us to only use pins. And in fact, that's going to force us just to create a Wii game because you can make a lot more money in video. That's fantastic. And so people start really getting in that mindset so they can pivot better and actually think of it as a fun challenge versus distress, like you were saying, James.
Yeah, and I don't know how to spin this because I'm a huge advocate, and I don't know how to spin what I'm going to say next, because I'm a huge advocate of positive thinking, and words matter. And if we think it, it's one thing. If we say it out loud, it's even magnified even more. But I love to pose the question to my team and my kids and whatnot after a day, and I'd be like, "Hey guys, where did we fail today? What did you fail at?" And not focusing necessarily on the failure, but what that does is that puts us down a path of creativity and ingenuity and thinking outside the box. Because if we're only focusing on the things we did right, well, we know what we did right, and that's what's working, right? And so if we pose the question, and I think it's a great, I'm a big believer in self audits, right? Just in individual lives. We should stand in front of the mirror and say, hey, where did I fail today? And, acknowledge those successes, but we can learn so much more from the setbacks or small stumbles that we make or obstacles that we encounter. And that's when the creative mind starts to come out. And just like you said, oh, that's fantastic. How do we, that's great. Let's solve that problem. And let's, something great can come out of it. And there was always something that happened on the 50 that I thought was going to be the worst thing ever. When it turned out, it was a great thing. It actually allowed us to pivot and adapt to allow us to be better than we were. And I was so grateful for those moments.
That's cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Was there any time on the 50/50, James, where Lisa, you talk a lot about, simplifying the process too, and like I said, getting complexity out. Was there any time, James, on the 50/50/50 where your team had like an aha moment of, well, if we just eliminate this, or if we just tweak this, it's going to make all the difference? Anything like that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, everything comes to mind for when that comes into play. I mean, we had no idea the level of fatigue we were going to experience. And when fatigue starts to hit and chaos starts to happen and things start to roll in that we can't control, organization becomes massive. And we were just so clueless as to what it was going to take. And we were so disorganized at the beginning that we had to start to put in short lists and protocols of things to do and follow, basically creating habits and routines out there on the 50. And that was kind of the step one for us to realizing, okay, those types of lists and procedures and whatnot, as simple as they are so effective when chaos is happening, right? If look, this is my morning routine every single day, and you knock it out of the park, it becomes easier and easier to do that, and you become more successful, and it becomes a habit. It becomes second nature. We needed that to happen out on the 50. But the biggest one was we hit about day 30. And before I started the journey, one of the things I said to myself was, I want to find out what my mental and physical limits are and what I do in that moment, right? And that moment came on day 30 when I mentally was just really breaking down. Physically, I was destroyed. The entire crew was exhausted, and we were like, we don't know how to do 20 more Ironmans, right? Like, that's still over 2 weeks worth of 140 miles a day, and then trying to get to another state and everything that comes with that. And ultimately I said, okay, I got off my bike. I was in the middle of the bike ride in Connecticut, and I literally crawled up onto the side of the road and found a small patch of grass, and I started to cry. And it's actually in the documentary, that moment. And in my mind, I was trying to process everything. And I literally was thinking about everything that I couldn't control, what we've talked about already. I was focusing on all the negativity and the pain and a lot of the stuff that I truly could not control. And I finally said to myself, look, what can you control? And can you be perfect for 1 second? And I was like, well, okay, I can control the next pedal stroke, right? That's right in front of me. Like, if nothing else matters and we have to progress, what's the one thing? Turn the pedal stroke over one time. And I got on my bike and I turned it over one time, and I did it with perfection. And I didn't die, right? And so I was like, okay, do that again. And I've learned that motion creates emotion, and the hardest thing to do with anything is to start or get going again. And so I started doing that, and I literally from that moment on started to focus on only what I could control. And once I did that, it freed up everybody, because everybody took that lead and started to do only what they could control. And everybody started to take their task and become very specific. And I let go of trying to control every aspect of every part of the campaign, and let go of the thing. I took everything off the table that was no longer in my control. And I said, okay, in order for us to be successful, in order for us to reach our goal, I can just be perfect for 1 second at a time. And it was amazing. 1 second turned into 1 minute, turned into an hour, turned into an Ironman. And if you take my times over the last 20 Ironmans, when we were broken, those last 20 Ironmans were my fastest. And there's nothing to explain that. My 50th and final Ironman in Utah was an 11:32 Ironman. We dipped under 7-minute miles, and we shed all 3,500 people that showed up with us that day to run. And so it just shows testament that once you focus on just what you can control and allow your team to do their job and focus on only what they can control, the impossible becomes possible.
Yeah. I think too, what I liked about what you said was it started with you. You know, you took the first pedal stroke and then everyone followed, and I thought that was really cool. That shows cool leadership too, because I think people are waiting for a signal in terms of behaviors to follow. And so you showed them not just like the action, but the behavior that you expected. And then and the corollary obviously is in business, same thing, right? So that was great leadership.
I think it's the same way in parenting, right? Lead by example.
Yeah. And like you said, just take that first step, take that. Sometimes people just get like paralyzed in their fear or anxiety, and just taking that next step.
I mean, how many times has anybody on the call looked back and said, this is my goal, this is my task list, and then you're like, don't do it. And 2 weeks have gone by and you've just been consumed by this task that you're supposed to do and it's on your list. And then finally you like muster up the courage and the whatever to do it that day. And it literally took you 5 minutes.
Because it's too big. Yeah.
Because you thought it was too big, and you just start to like put these thoughts, and it just starts to spiral. And it literally was a 5-minute task that was no big deal. And so again, starting is always the hardest. And so a trick that I always do is create the least barrier of entry for anything you're doing in order to get going. And a good example for that is like, if you can't work out in the morning and you just like getting going is hard, go to bed in your workout clothes. If you don't want to do that, like put your shoes right beside your bed, have your little shake ready in the morning, like put things in place that create the least barrier of entry for you to start. Because once you start, it's always easier, right? And you never regret going and finishing once you've done it. It's starting. Starting's the hardest thing.
I'm going to bed in my workout clothes. That's what
buddy.
I just picked up a hot tip there, I think. One thing you said that reminded me of, a couple things. One is starting small, but also, breaking it into the parts, right? So people, they can take that step. So it's not impossible. There's one technique we use with people where two things happen. It's called impossible to possible. And we take teams and we break them into two. And we say, we pick a common enemy, a common problem. What's just impossible within our team that we'll never be able to do. And sometimes they have something specific and sometimes they don't. And they write that down, and then we say, take that impossible, and they have to break it down into parts. And we make them break it down into 20 impossibles. What are all the reasons why you can't do X, Y, Z? And we make it hard and say 20 because We want them to really think it through versus just say, you know, the easy stuff that's on the tip of their tongue. And when they get done, they list a lot of things that they think are impossible. And then we say, okay, swap your list of impossibles with the other team. Give away your impossibles. And the other team has to solve your list and make them possible. And what's funny is when you get someone else's impossibles, you are better at solving other people's problems than your own. It's called cognitive distance. And what's cool about that is because it's not your problem, you can make so many things possible.
Well, you
so
remove
having
the
a
emotion
team is really
from it.
important.
Yeah, sorry, I just said you remove the emotion from it, right? When you hand it off to
Right.
someone else.
Bingo.
And
Yeah.
it's our emotions that get in the way of anything. I do that same technique with fears, right? Because people are like, I'm scared of something. And I'm like, okay, let's break that fear down all the way into many, many different parts.
Yes.
Until you get to a point where that one part doesn't scare you. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to tackle just that part of that fear, right? And slowly we'll inch towards conquering that major fear. But it all comes down to feeling and emotion, right? And that's why you're saying, give those problems to someone else. Same, give those fears to someone else and let them solve it. Break it down. I love that. That's great.
Cool.
Great exercise, Lisa. And it turns out we actually have a little something in common as well. I rewatched one of your talks where you referred to yourself as a recovering ad agency person. I have as well. So, but I love that talk because you talk a lot about potential and, you know, everybody having the potential to be creative, to contribute, to innovate. And, you know, I think that sometimes, you know, taking that first step or speaking up or, you know, not feeling like you're staying in your lane holds people back. And yeah, have you seen, you know, any examples lately or anything that comes to mind where people have kind of gotten out of their comfort zones within their organization and, you know, contributed in different ways?
For sure. You know, it's interesting. And that's another thing too that I think James and I have in common is it's not only do we help people focus, but we help them get focused on their potential because they often don't. It's like my line is like James, just like you're teaching people their potential, right? In terms of their athletic ability, and maybe they want to run a marathon, maybe it's an Ironman, maybe it's a 5K, but you get them there. And for me, it's, you know, everyone can be innovative. It's not just the people in the creative department or in R&D or whatever it is. It's just they need to know how. You know, they have the will, but they don't know how. And so they need someone to give them that guidance, like James giving them that daily plan. And I do the same thing. And it's amazing when people realize the how, what they can achieve. And we've seen a lot of people recently in terms of reinventing themselves, right? Once they've learned how to do it. So we've got, you know, you've got big organizations like, you've got Ford, you've got Giorgio Armani, you've got all these companies that are pivoting their production lines to help make ventilators. Like Dyson now is making COVID ventilators rather than making vacuum cleaners. And they're using the same production line and they're just repurposing what they do for a different cause. You've got people that have said we'll never be able to do things remotely, from doctors to small plumbers that have done it with award-winning plum in Florida that are doing consultations online. People are really pivoting and starting to believe what's possible because they forced themselves to be put in that situation. So if we can help people see the potential and just take the first step to try it, it's amazing how much they've been able to accomplish during this very difficult time. And I would predict that a lot of people they're not going to go back to the same way of doing business in a good way, because now they realize they don't have to. They challenge their assumptions and they have a whole new potential because of it.
Mm-hmm. So true. Thank you for sharing that. And James, and feel free, I wanted to put it out there, please ask questions in the chat. We have probably another, 20 minutes or so. So if you've got a burning question for Lisa or James, please go ahead and put that in there. But James, I did want to ask you, you're father of 5, right? And, you traveled with your family in very close quarters on the 50-50-50. I know you're a very active dad. I think your daughter, Lucy, right, ran the last 5K with you of every marathon and every race. you know, any advice for parents that are working parents, especially right now, that are home with their kids, you know, balancing this, staying together, close living quarters, you know, I mean, luckily nobody's busted through this door. I have like 4 signs, do not enter, you know, but, or else I won't feed you. No, I'm just kidding. But any words of wisdom that you can share from that experience? It must have been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, going out on the 50 with a family, and actually all the big adventures that we've done, we do them as a family. And, you know, everybody has to have their purpose, their reason why they do things. And mine's easy. It's my 5 kids and my wife, right? So it's super easy for me to isolate those. But I think right now, obviously we're in a very unique time, and we got quarantined or forced to be with our families. And I think it was a great thing. I've had a lot of conversations with colleagues and friends, and they were like, man, we just got too busy with life, and we weren't prioritizing things that were important, and we were missing out on a lot of the small and little things. And I think during this time of shutdown, where we were forced to spend time with our families, hopefully people just had a realization of the importance of the simple things in life and the things that truly matter to us. And I get it, man. Trust me. I did a post a little bit ago about how everybody's in a different boat, and we're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats. And some people are worrying about their mortgage and where their next meal is going to come from. And other people are worrying about, you know, where I'm going to get my hair cut and what gym I'm going to go to. And so I get that we're all in different boats, but hopefully the overarching realization was been how important family is, and how important it is to stick and work together. And common thread, how important it is to focus on the things we can control. And so I was super grateful to, I mean, this is the most I've been home in 5 years. And it really put into perspective how much I was gone and how much I was missing at home. And so it's allowed me to pivot my business, and I've taken the opportunity to create some additional online stuff so that I can be home more. I'm putting in a lot of value and emphasis on that. And so I just hope that a lot of people took this opportunity again to do a family audit, not only to continue to develop those relationships, but something like this is going to happen again. And I don't think we're at the tail end of this either. And I think, again, it's a good time to self-audit everything in your life. What can I do different if I was in the same situation? How could I prepare differently? What do I need to eliminate? What do I need to add? How can I adjust so that I can be one of the people that are more comfortable in this situation, right? And work towards that. And what do I need to sacrifice, right? So all of those things come to mind, right? We're all in different boats, but I think the overarching thing is to like just an appreciation of what we had, what was taken away from us, and how to prepare ourselves better for when it happens again.
I like that idea of the audit. That's really important, especially too now that, you know, work life is really, you know, we always said they were blending, but now I think they're really seamless. I mean, the problem right now is people are working more than ever because there's just no boundaries, right? At home, like they get done with dinner and then they can get back online, that kind of thing. So that's doing that audit, I think, is really important personally in terms of what matters. And then, you know, at work, the same thing. One of the things we talk about with people is, you know, what do you define what meaning is? What is meaningful? And the problem with a lot of teams right now is they don't know. And what we have them do is we have them actually make a T-chart, and they all list on the left-hand side of the T-chart, you know, what do they spend their time doing?
Did you say teams or teens?
Their team, like their company team.
Yeah, I got 4 teenage girls, and so I heard.
You can do it with them too, James. See what they say.
Yeah, probably.
What do you spend your time doing? It'll be like TikTok and stuff. But so they, you know, teams together list what do they spend their time doing, and then they on the left-hand side of their chart, and then you have them circle the things on that list that are valuable. And what people find is that they don't circle many things. Right? And they, because like what you were saying before, James, it's like, you know, you have your 3 things during the day or 3 things that matter, but we, you know, then we get all this crap that, you know, meetings, reports, emails, tactics, all this stuff. And so if something's not circled, it means it's not valuable. And then you have to ask yourself, well, then why are you doing it? And if the answer is obligation, assumptions, it creates a really good discussion. Because the idea is you're going to get rid of that to create space for things that matter, and whether that's personal or professional. So that's the first side of the teacher, but the other side of the teacher is even more important and harder for people, which is, what do you wish you were doing? What's valuable? And people, at first they struggle because they're like, okay, in a business situation, it's, I get to collaborate with my colleagues, I get to meet innovative people, I get to strike new partnership. It tends to be external things. And the stuff that we don't like doing tends to be internal things. And so it really helps as a team or a group define what matters so they can focus. And I know I just saw one of the things in the chat asking us about focus that, James, you and I can build on, but I really like that idea of auditing, because once you figure out what doesn't work, you can do a meeting audit. We tell people to kill stupid meetings and do an audit of every meeting they have during the year. And they have to get rid of 50% of that. And what they find
I
is,
refuse to go to meetings.
yeah, that's good. But that's the point, which is like, until they really sit down and audit it, people are on autopilot. So this is like what I'll call, COVID is like the great pause.
Mhm.
So true. I've never heard that, but that's great.
Great pause.
It's so true.
One of the things in the chat here, Amy, can we talk about this
Sure.
one question?
Sure, of course.
For James and I, how can we engage, right, with teams?
Yeah, under pressure, I think everybody's feeling a sense of pressure right now.
Yeah.
You're thankful you still have a job, but your job might look a lot different than it used to. And, and I think that, engage, how do you engage with a team while you're under this, kind of, whether it's internal, external pressure, and maybe, Eleanor asked, how does focus play a role in that?
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll give you a stab at it first. And then James, I'm curious what you think.
Yeah.
I said, one of the things James and I keep talking about here is fear. And so much of what's going on with people under pressure is they almost feel like stuck, right? Because they're fearful. People are starting to get out of that now, by the way. Like, they're kind of done with fear. They just want to get on with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
With business.
Yeah, we're over it.
Yeah, we're over it. We're like, okay, now what do we do? Okay, I got it. This is uncomfortable. Let's do something. So I usually talk about two things. The first is with people to help them overcome fear is, setting up norms. We had norms before when we met in person or we went to an office, and now it's like, oh, there's no norms. So how are we supposed to behave every day? And it's stupid things business-wise, like even saying, so when we get together, are we on video or not? Right? Like, is every time we get together, how long is it for? What time are we allowed to sign off? Stupid stuff, but it matters because everyone's like over Zooming right now. We're so zoomed out, we don't know what to do with ourselves. And then once you set up the norms, I think the other thing is, how can you start to have more of, I'll call it a mini mindset? Because like James, you were saying, right, you break it down into parts, right? What's the next step, the next pedal stroke you can do? I think the only way you're going to be able to focus is if you get this mini mindset, like, why don't you question the frequency of your meetings? Do they need to be every week? Why don't you question the length? Do they have to be an hour? Why does everyone have to be on the call? Why isn't it cool to be uninvited to meetings? So once you start to get people to think about focus and how they spend their time and that less is more, they're going to start to be able to focus on what matters. What do you think, James?
Yeah, no, brilliant points. And we need to create a new normal is exactly what you're saying, right. Is those new habits, new routines, new normals, so that we aren't sitting here wasting time. And, the thought has come across to me many times of people that are in employment situations and worried about their job. And a lot of people have lost jobs. And again, we go back to a self-audit scenario. I'm huge on creating value, right? And so if you're trying to connect with a team or worried about XYZ, if your main focus becomes on, again, what you can control, and what you can control means creating value, you have nothing to worry about. You shouldn't have any fears because you're creating value. I think a lot of people right now are going, oh my gosh, the report just came out and company productivity only went down 5% and payroll went down 20%.
Yeah.
Am I the person that was I coasting, or was I creating value and I don't have anything to worry about? And so I think as far as connecting with your team and being a leader and whatnot, if you focus on creating value, whatever that means, value being a leader, value being productive, value being process, anything, right? if you focus on how do I create the maximum amount of value, then really those fears get put aside and you don't have anything to worry about.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very
Great.
cool.
And we have another question here for you, Lisa. What's the best innovation process and tool that you recommend? I know you do a lot of work with innovation, and I'm sure that there are some processes or tools that might be kind of an easy go-to that are just no-brainers. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I like, rather than processes are big, right? I'd rather focus on tools. I think it's more about, to me, the best innovators, they've got the mindset and the toolkit versus a 12-step program, right? So because every culture is different, the same 12-step program doesn't apply. So my favorite thing is to tell people tools, and if it works for your culture, try it. If it doesn't seem like it fits, don't do it, right? There's other tools to try. So my favorite one is called assumption reversal. And this kind of gets to like, this fits a lot like James, what you were thinking. So like, I'm sure everyone thought the assumption was you can't do 50 Ironmans in 50 states, but you question those assumptions, right? And so no innovation happens unless you're allowed to do that. So this tool, assumption reversal, has people take a problem. If you're stuck in a rut, right? If you've tried to get in a brainstorm and you guys have come up with ideas and they've all sucked or whatever it was, you're stuck in a rut and you need to question how you're thinking about the problem. So for example, we'll say to somebody, let's say you wanted to come up with the idea of a new restaurant. And we would say, why don't you write down all the assumptions you need to have for a restaurant? And you would do this with meetings or whatever. And they write down the 20 assumptions they have about a restaurant. So actually, can I try this with the people in the chat right now? Let's do it. So let's have everybody here that's on, type in the chat, tell me the things that you think have to be in a restaurant. All the things that must be in a restaurant right now. If people want to type some things in.
Food.
Tables, right? Yep, good. Food. Yep, keep going. Servers, that's good. Any other dishes, music? Oh, that's good. I like it. Alcohol, there we go. Food, beverages, table, server, pans, pots. Got it. Okay, lighting, nice. Serving tools, utensils, Elise, there we go. Now we're getting, see, you got to keep it going. Forks, beer, nice. All right, so capital, oh, there we go. Forks, got it. Okay, menus. All right, so let me stop there. So then what we say to people is you have to take all those assumptions. Now I want you to reverse them. Trash, customers, very good. I want you to reverse those. And the reverse isn't the opposite, like menu, no menu, food, no food. It's the alternative. So what would be the alternative, for example, for food? We can't have food. What else could we have at the restaurant? Type into your chat right now, what might be a reversal to the assumption of food? Smoothies, good. Alcohol, drinks, books, great. Alcohol, wine, booze. VR, nice. Music, VR, energy bars, puppies. Oh my God, adorable. Coffee, games, live music. All right, great. So what happens is you guys did a great job, by the way. You get the reversals of all these assumptions and you're able to put together a whole new experience based on those reversals. So here's an example. With HBO, they had us think about meetings. They hated their meetings, the meetings sucked. And they wrote down all their assumptions about meetings. They have to be in a conference room, they have to be an hour long, everyone has to come. They wrote down all the reversals of them. And what they found out was not everybody has to come. You can invite whoever you want. And a few of them started inviting their competitors to meetings, which was shocking and amazing, right? When someone from Showtime showed up, they were like, oh my God, but they had some good competitive intel. They decided that they only had to be 15-minute long. And they decided that they didn't have to be in a conference room. In fact, what they decided was they would send out the agenda and the location for their meetings the night before. And if you didn't read the agenda, you wouldn't know where the meeting was and you'd be busted for not having read it in advance. So you get the idea, right? So it's a great way for you to attack things for innovation. Thanks for indulging me, everybody, on the chat too.
Yeah, that was a great tool.
Fun.
We don't have a ton of time left, and this is a big boulder, Lisa. But I was talking to Ken, our executive vice president, and he was sharing with me a lot of your work on diversity and inclusion and different boards you sit on. And I know you're a contributor to Women at Forbes. And we could take a whole session on diversity and inclusion, right? If not a session every week. But you know, with everything going on right now, how do you see corporations really changing, you know, for the better, some of their diversity inclusion policies, um, as they currently are?
Yeah, I think where people start is obviously they go towards hiring, right? They do blind recruiting and resumes, et cetera. So they make sure that there's no biases. They do training in terms of those kinds of things. I think that will definitely pick up. And I think that that's good. But I think it's what we need to emphasize, and what's going to be good is it's not about getting diversity, and it's not about including. It's about equality. And so what's interesting about that, and I've said on many boards, from Novartis to the NSA to the World Economic Forum, and they're all very different, but they all have the same issues. And people, they want to be hired and they want to be included, but if they're not heard, they quit. So if they're not treated equally, like it's inviting me to the meeting but not letting me talk, I'm included, but I'm not equal. And so I think that's going to be the biggest struggle for people, is the equality piece. But I think the good news about the current movements with like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, et cetera, is that it's the first step is awareness. The second is acknowledging. And then the next is taking that, like James said, the first step, which is getting the right people on the bus.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. There's one more question from the panel, and then I'll probably, I was trying to think of an end closing question to be like a signature. So I think I have one, but I just wanted to get to one question here that says, Lisa, what do you think about design thinking?
Yeah, I love design thinking. I think that design thinking is such a buzzword, and it's a buzz topic right now, because what it's trying to do is, I guess the best way to talk about it is design thinking is like user-centered design. So you're thinking about, right, what is it the customer perspective versus the internal perspective. So I think it's very smart. I think this is why we have to stop being unfocused on stuff that doesn't matter, so we can focus on what does the customer want versus what we want to deliver to them. So I think if you can train people in design thinking, very smart move.
Can you define
the design thinking?
Yeah, just someone asked, not for me.
Yep. Oh, you're welcome.
You're asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Yeah. I mean, there's a few different schools of thought, but design thinking is really thinking about the design from I say that what it really comes down to is like user-centered design. So it's how do you actually take what the users want in mind and how they think and use things, and design based on that, versus having a bunch of engineers sitting in a room and saying, if we could make a car, what would it be? Versus asking a customer, if you could have a car, what would you want?
Oh, so actually listening to people and then adjusting.
Imagine
that novel concept of internalizing what somebody else says and valuing their opinion. That's neat.
Imagine.
Cool.
And there's more to it, but that's that's part of the idea. Is why do we do things the way we do it, and what does that mean in terms of what people need, like solving their problem.
Great. Okay, well, without further ado, my ending question, I would love to hear from both of you. James, I guess we'll go you first since Lisa got us kicked off. What is your favorite quote?
Our favorite quote?
That you can leave us with, a favorite quote.
I mean, it's something that I like to say is the secret to success is doing a lot of little things consistently over a long period of time. I just think that is so impactful, and you just can't lose. And at the end of the day, I'll make up a quote right now that if you show up and believe in yourself, you can't lose.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And Lisa, do you have a favorite that comes to mind?
I thought he was going to give me the Yoda, do or do not, there is no try. That's where I thought James was going to go.
That would have been amazing, but I did actually think of my favorite quote, and it's this. There's no success outside the home that'll ever compensate for failure inside your home.
Yes.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's so true.
I love that. I love that. I like, I do mean do or do not, there is no try. I think that's really, really cool. But I also think there's a few others, but the first step in making, this is an interesting one. The first step in making a dream come true is to wake up. And what's interesting about what I took away from today was, the reality is you know, hope without a plan is just a dream. So you really need a plan. And like James said, taking that first step, and like I'm saying, like questioning how you do things, that's how you can take that first step forward. I mean, everyone here on this call has tremendous potential. They're smart. They wouldn't be interacting with all of us if they weren't. And I think they just need to know how to take the first step.
Thank you. Well, with that, I just want to thank you both so much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks,
and wasn't nearly as scary as I thought it would be hosting my first mashup here.
You're great.
So,
you killed.
Thank you very much.
killed.
Now, welcome back, Mary Ann. She's going to tell people how they can get a copy of the recording and the next in our series.
Cool. Thanks, James. That was fun too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Amy. You did great. I enjoyed your questions, and James and Lisa, thank you so much for the conversation. This is awesome. And so we are going to stop here today. And if you have any further questions for Lisa, James, Amy, me, or anyone else on the BigSpeak team, please reach out. My email is on all the webinar materials. We do record every session, and it will be automatically shared with all of you, as well as all of those who registered and were unable to attend. So next week on the BigSpeak webinar mashup series, we'll be talking to two people who have had very different experiences with the FBI. We'll have Molly Bloom, who's the best-selling author of Molly's Game, which recounts the rise and fall of the most exclusive high-stakes underground poker game in the world, and Christopher Voss, who is a former kidnapping negotiator for the FBI and the best-selling author of Never Split the Difference, negotiating as if your life depended on it. And that is scheduled for this same time, Wednesday, June 24th at 10 a.m. Pacific. And registration for the session is open now at bigspeak.com/webinar, and we will be sending invitations out next week to the webinar attendees email list. And thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Lisa and James. We really appreciate you being here with us today. And Amy, thank you again for moderating. You did a great job. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we will see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks again.
Thank you.